This is Chapter 21, Absolute Monarchs in Europe, 1500 to 1800s, and students will be able to understand the development of absolute and constitutional monarchs in Europe from 1500s until the 1800s. So Section 1, this is Section 1, Spain's Empire and European Absolutionism. Alright, describe Spain's empire and the growth of absolute monarchy. That's the objective of today's lesson. That's what we're going to get through. And during the time of religious and economic instability, Philip II ruled Spain with a strong hand. That's the main idea. And why does it matter now? Why does this matter? When faced with crisis, many heads of government take on additional economic or political powers. This is why it matters today. All right, some terms and names we're going to go over. Absolute monarch. That's a king or queen who has the ultimate power to seek control of all aspects of society. That means like one person would control everything. That would be no bueno. Not good. Divine right. The idea that monarchs are God's representatives on earth and therefore only answer to God. And Philip II, he inherited Spain, the Spanish Netherlands, and the American colonies. This guy was rich. He had a lot of money, a lot of loot. All right. What is an absolute monarch or ruler? What clues does this picture give? I don't know. He's well dressed. This is Louis XIV. He's got a lot of hair. He's holding a ball and a cane piece. He's got stockings on and he's resting his feet on a pillow. It would take 100 people to dress this guy every day. That's not a lie. All right, Charles V. All right. As the Habsburg king, Charles V inherited Spain, Spain's American colonies, parts of Italy, and the lands of Austria and the Netherlands. As the elected Holy Roman Emperor, he ruled much of Germany. It was the first time since Charlemagne. Charlemagne was a European ruler that controlled much of this territory. A devoted Catholic, Charles V not only fought Muslims, but opposed Lutherans. So those are two different religions. All right, in 1555, ooh, that's a lot of fives, he unwillingly agreed to the Peace of Augsburg, which allowed German princes to choose the region for their territory. The religion for their territory, which allowed German princes to choose their religion for their territory. So these German princes got to choose what the people or how the people would worship. The following year, Charles V divided his immense empire and retired to the monastery. So that's like a church hideaway. It was probably pretty ballin'. Probably had a lot of cool stuff on that monastery. To his brother Ferdinand, and he left the Austrian and the Holy Roman Empire. That's who he left the one part of the empire to. And to his son Philip II, who inherited Spain, the Spanish Netherlands, and the American colonies. So you can see all the green Charles V left to his son and his brother. That was nice. He left a little bit to his brother. That's kind of cool. All right, here's Spain and its colonies. When was this? This is probably the 1500s. Spain controlled most of South America and North America. That's a lot of land. They had a lot of land overseas. It's a big empire to control. When you're kind of this little country over here above Africa, you got all this land over here. What are you going to do? How are you going to police all that land? All right, Philip II's powerful empire. In 1580, the King of Portugal died without an heir. That means he had no dude to take up the throne after him. That means he had no son, pretty much, or no cousin, or no nephew, or whatever. Because Philip was the king's nephew, okay, so he did have a nephew. He seized the Portuguese kingdom, counting Portuguese strongholds in Africa, India, and the East Indies. He now had an empire that circled the globe. It went global, just like I just showed you. North America, South America, Europe, and parts of Asia. All right, Philip's empire provided him with incredible wealth. He had mad money. By 1600, American mines had supplied Spain with an estimate of 339,000 pounds of gold. That's a lot of gold, yo. Between 1550 and 1650, roughly 16,000 tons of silver bullion? I can't say that word, bullion. It's like it's a Spanish galleon. It was melted into their coin, if you will, or their ships. Okay. All right, so this silver money was uploaded from the Spanish galleons or ships. Spanish ships were known as galleons, apparently. The King of Spain claimed between a fourth and a fifth of every shipload of treasure to his royal share. So he took a piece of the pie. Everything that these guys mined, all these Spanish guys that enslaved the Native Americans and even imported Africans to go work these mines off of slave labor, this guy took a cut for his royal share, a fifth. 1/5. 1/5 would be 20%. And he's not doing anything. He's just ruling. All right. With his wealth, Spain was able to support a large standing army of about 50,000 soldiers. That's not too much, but I guess back then it was a lot of people. All right. When Philip assumed the throne, Europe was experiencing religious wars caused by the Reformation. However, religious conflict was not new to Spain, and the Reconquista, the campaign to drive Muslims out of Spain, had been completed for only about 64 years before. In addition, Philip's great-grandparents, Isabella and Ferdinand, had used the Inquisition to investigate suspected heretics or non-believers of Christianity. Philip believed that it was his duty to defend Catholicism against the Muslims of the Ottoman Empire and the Protestants in Europe. It's just a big old religious war. That's all you have to remember. In 1571, the Pope called to all Catholic princes to take up arms against the mounting power of the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire were the Muslims coming from the East, if you will, the Persian Gulf. Nowadays, this would be like Iraq and Saudi Arabia, maybe even Afghanistan. All right, Philip sent 250 Spanish ships, or as they would call it, the Armada, to defeat the Ottomans, to defeat the Muslims. Probably here in the Mediterranean Sea. This is where Spain is. So they went in the Mediterranean Sea. This boot right here is called Italy. And you got Rome, which is in Italy. All right, moving on. The Spanish Armada. In 1588, Philip launched the Spanish Armada in an attempt to push the Protestant England Queen Elizabeth II he wanted to punish the Protestant Queen England. That was a big mistake. Elizabeth had supported Protestant subjects who rebelled against Philip. So King Philip and Queen Elizabeth up in England, they had some beef. So Philip launched his navy up there to show her who was boss. But she was smart. The Armada was defeated by Sir Francis Drake. Sir Francis Drake was probably the most infamous pirate of all time. Even though he never claimed himself as a pirate, he definitely was. All right, so what happened in this battle? The defeat of the Spanish Armada. Who was it against? It was against the English versus the Spanish in 1588. Where was it at? The English Channel, which is laid out for you right here in this line that's drawn out. All right, the details. 130 Spanish ships were attacked by the English Navy because the Spanish sent up its armada or its ships up to England. But the English were smart and they were waiting for them. And the English Navy outmaneuvered the Spanish and used long-range guns to hail upon them. And the results of this battle was that Spain was weakened and the English Navy became the strongest navy on the planet. The Spanish Navy was pretty much destroyed in this battle. So that's going to be a key turning point in world powers in 1588. 1588. All right. Although the setbacks seriously weakened Spain, its wealth gave it appearance of strength for a long time. Philip's gray granite palace, the Escorial, had massive walls and huge gates to demonstrate its power, and the Escorial also reflected Philip's faith. Within its walls stood a monastery, as well as a palace. A monastery is a place of worship, or a church, if you will, a grand church. The golden age of Spanish art and literature. Spain's great wealth did more than support the navies and build palaces. It also allowed monarchs and nobles, monarchs or kings and queens, to become patrons of artists. During the 16th and 17th centuries, Spain experienced a golden age in the arts and literature. The works of two great painters show both the faith and the pride of the Spanish during this period. El Greco was born in Greece and spent much of his adult life in Spain. His name meant the Greek, and his art often puzzled the people of his time. He chose brilliant, sometimes clashing colors, distorted the human figure, and expressed symbolically. Expressed emotional symbolically in his paintings. Okay, he showed emotions in his paintings. You can see a bunch of people crying, and you can see Jesus there, and I don't know, maybe that's a disciple over there. I'm not too sure. All right, so this guy was just painting differently of his time, and although unusual, El Greco's techniques showed the deep Catholic faith in Spain. He painted saints and martyrs as huge, long-limbed figures that had supernatural air. All right, Diego Velázquez, the paintings of Diego Velázquez, on the other hand, reflected the pride of the Spanish monarchy. And he painted 50 years after this El Greco guy, and was the court painter to Philip IV of Spain. And he was best known for his portraits of the royal family and his scenes of court life. Like El Greco, he was noted for using rich colors. Don Quixote, the publication of Don Quixote's de la Mancha. I can't speak Spanish. I'm terrible at Spanish. In 1605 was often called the birth of the modern European novel. All right, in this book, he wrote about a poor Spanish nobleman who went a little crazy after reading too many books of heroic knights. Hoping to right every manner wrong, Don Quixote rode forth in a rusty suit of armor mounted on a feeble horse, and at one point he mistook some windmills for giants. Some critics believe that he was mocking chivalry, the knightly code of the Middle Ages. Others maintain the book was about an idealistic person who longs for the romantic past because he is frustrated with the materialistic world. So this is going to be Spanish art and literature of the time. All right, the Spanish Empire weakens. The gold and silver coming from the Americas made Spain temporarily wealthy. Temporary. That just means for a period of time. However, such treasure helped to cause long-term economic problems. So too much treasure might not be a good thing. And one of those not good things would be inflation and taxes. Who likes taxes? I don't like taxes. I feel like I pay too many taxes, especially here in New Jersey. One of these problems was severe inflation, which is a decline in the value of money accompanied by a rise in prices of goods and services. Inflation in Spain had two main causes. First, Spain's population had been growing. As more people demanded food and other goods, merchants were able to raise prices. Who wants to pay more for foods and goods? I don't. Second, their silver dollar, if you will, flooded the market and its value dropped, meaning a lot of it came in. People needed more amounts of silver to buy things, and this is going to cause inflation. Spain's economic decline also had other causes. When Spain expelled the Jews or the Moors, also known as the Muslims, around 1500, it lost many valuable artists and business people. Artisans, sorry. Artisans are people that make things. In addition, Spain's nobilities or nobles did not have to pay taxes. So the Spanish nobles don't have to pay taxes. That's not fair. If you have royal blood in you, you don't have to pay taxes. Everyone should pay taxes. If I'm paying taxes, you should pay taxes. The tax burden fell on the lower classes. That's not good. The people that can't afford it. The burden prevented them from accumulating enough wealth to start their own businesses. And as a result, Spain never developed a middle class. Most people fit within a middle class. Most of the population of a country fits in a middle class. All right, making Spain's enemies rich. Guilds or craftsmen or merchants had emerged in the Middle Ages and still dominated business in Spain. Such guilds used old-fashioned methods. This made Spanish cloth and manufactured goods more expensive than those elsewhere, and as a result, the Spaniards brought much of what they needed from France, England, and Netherlands. That means they're importing stuff. No, you want to depend on yourself. Spain's great wealth flooded into the pockets of foreigners. Yeah, and you're also giving other countries your money. No bueno, not good. Speaking of Spanish, who were mostly Spain's enemies. So they were paying for other goods from other countries. They were taking France and England. They were buying their products, and that's their enemy. You're buying your enemy's product. That's not good, because you're going to make them rich. All right, the Dutch revolt. In the Spanish Netherlands, Philip had to maintain an army and keep his subjects under control. The Dutch had little in common with their Spanish rulers. While Spain was Catholic, the Netherlands had many Calvinist congregations. It's a different type of Christianity. I'm pretty sure it is. Also, Spain had a sluggish economy, while the Dutch had a prosperous middle class. There you go. I told you, most of the population is that middle class. Philip raised taxes on the Netherlands and took steps to crush Protestantism. The Protestants. I can't say that word. All right, in response, in 1566, angry Protestant mobs swept through Catholic churches. So they were going to be angry. The Dutch are going to be angry, and they're going to revolt. If I was the Dutch, I probably would have done the same thing. Philip had sent an army under the Spanish Duke of Alva to punish the rebels. On a single day in 1568, the Duke executed 1,500 Protestants and suspected rebels. They might have not even done anything. The Dutch continued to fight the Spanish for another 11 years. Oh, that is a long war. Finally, in 1579, 7 northern provinces of the Netherlands, which were largely Protestant, united and declared their independence from Spain. Good for you, the Dutch. Good for you. They became the United Provinces of the Netherlands. The 10 southern provinces, present-day Belgium, were Catholic and remained under Spanish control. All right, moving on. The independent Dutch prosper. The United States provinces of the Netherlands was different from other European states of the time. For one thing, the people there practiced religious tolerance. In addition, the United Provinces was not a kingdom but a republic. And each province had an elected governor whose power depended on the support of merchants and landholders. So the United Provinces is a republic. That means they weren't a monarchy. A republic is when you elect officials to choose laws for you. Sounds familiar? That's what America is. America is a democratic republic. We elect officials to, I guess you could say, rule over us for a certain period of time, and then they're out of office, and then we elect more people. All right, Dutch art. During the 1600s, the Netherlands did not have the best banks, but they had some of the best artists in Europe. Wealthy merchants sponsored many of these artists. So merchants, people that bought and traded goods, sponsored a lot of these artists to make some awesome paintings, as you see here to your left. Okay, Rembrandt. He was one of the greatest Dutch artists of the period, and he painted portraits of wealthy middle-class merchants. He also produced group portraits. In The Night's Watch, he portrayed a group of city guards, and he used sharp contrasts and light and shadow to draw attention to his focus. Another artist that was fascinated with light and dark was Jan Vermeer. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Like many other Dutch artists, he chose domestic indoor settings for his portraits, and he often painted women doing such familiar activities such as pouring milk from a jug or reading a letter. All right, the Dutch trading empire. The stability of the government allowed the Dutch people to concentrate on economic growth. The merchants of Amsterdam brought surplus of grain in Poland and crammed them into their warehouses. And when they heard about a poor harvest in southern Europe, they shipped the grain south while prices were high. Very smart. The Dutch had a large fleet of perhaps 5,000 ships in 1636, probably the largest the world has ever seen at that time. This fleet helped the Dutch East India Company, a trading company controlled by the Dutch government, to dominate the Asian spice trade and the Indian Ocean trade. Gradually, the Dutch replaced the Indians as the bankers of Europe. So this is when the Dutch were going to create a trading empire. Absolutionism in Europe. Even though Philip II lost his Dutch possessions, he was a forceful ruler in many ways. He tried to control every aspect of the empire's affairs, and during the next few centuries, many European monarchs, kings or queens, would also claim the authority to rule without limits to their power. The theory of absolutionism. These rulers wanted to be absolute monarchs, kings and queens who held all the power within their state's boundaries, so they controlled everything. Their goal was to control every aspect of society. Can you imagine that today? Can you imagine if someone was telling me or telling you what type of music to listen to, what type of clothes you could wear, what type of food you can eat? That's an absolute monarch. They can control every aspect of your life. That's no bueno. It's not good. It goes against American values. Absolute monarchs believed in divine right, meaning that God created the monarchy and that the monarchy acted on God's representation on earth. That sounds like a bunch of baloney. An absolute monarch answered only to God, not to his or her subjects. Yeah, that doesn't sound to be correct at all. All right, growing powers of Europe's monarchs. As Europe emerged from the Middle Ages, monarchs grew increasingly powerful. The decline of feudalism, the rise of cities, and the growth of national kingdoms all helped centralize authority. In addition, the growing middle class usually backed monarchs because they promised a peaceful, supportive climate for business. Monarchs used the wealth of colonies to pay for their ambitions. Church authority also broke down during the late Middle Ages and the Reformation, and that opened the way for these monarchs to assume even greater control All right, and the crisis that led to absolutionism. The 17th century was a period of great upheaval in Europe. Religions and territory conflicts between states led to almost continuous warfare. There's always wars being fought. This caused governments to build huge armies and to levy even higher taxes on an already suffering population. These pressures, in turn, brought about widespread unrest. Sometimes peasants revolted, or poor people, really poor people, were called peasants. In response to this crisis, monarchs tried to impose order by increasing their own power. As absolute rulers, they regulated everything from religious worship to social gatherings. They created new government bureaucracies to control their country's economic life. Their goal was to free themselves from the limitations imposed by the nobility and by the representative bodies, such as Parliament. Parliament are elected officials. I know these are a lot of big words, but just know that they were trying to take full control of the government. Only with such freedom could they rule absolutely, and as did the most famous monarch of all time, Louis XIV of France. So Louis XIV of France was an absolute monarch. And I know that was a lot, but that was your lesson for today. Thanks for listening. Peace out.